And we're back here. I analyze this. We're joined by the Attorney General, Gordon Ray, here actually in the studio. Pull that microphone a little closer, Mr. AG. So you can still relax. You know, that's the reason why you're on the couch, right? I'm a shrink, you know, so I got you on the couch, literally and figuratively. How are you?
I'm very good. Thank you. Looking forward to talking with you today.
Yeah, man, glad to have you. I think you were on because you had made a presentation at the forum.
Yes.
And that was Civil War or Malcolm X?
That was Civil War, but
So-
I had just published a book on the first African American soldier to ever be commissioned
Correct.
as an officer in the U.S. military, and so
Yeah.
I did a talk on that.
Okay,
Correct.
good. That was Pennsylvania, right? That had to do with Pennsylvania.
He originally from Pennsylvania,
Yeah.
fought in the Civil War, and was a major leading figure in Reconstruction in the South.
Wow, that's awesome. So, first of all, I'm glad to have you here. Who is Gordon Ray? For those who don't know Gordon Ray, and listening to you, listen to us, hearing you for the first time and analyze this. Describe yourself.
Describe myself? Mm-hmm. Wow. Okay, that's a hard one.
Originally from where?
I'm originally from Tennessee.
Oh, really?
Right.
You're a volunteer?
I grew up in Oak Ridge, Tennessee, which is a fascinating place. It's where the atomic bomb was made.
Wow.
That place, along with Los Alamos.
Okay.
And it was a spectacular place to be a kid in because it had scientists and people from all over the world. And so I grew up with Christians, Muslims, Buddhists, Jews, as well as with people who were black, brown, yellow, you name it.
They had a diverse representation at Oak Ridge?
Totally.
Why so? What was it about Oak Ridge that in the 40s and 50s that it was the demographics was diversified like that?
Well, because it was a science community, pretty much.
Okay, well,
it's
see?
where the bomb was
Yeah.
made, and so there were scientists from all over the world.
Wow.
And since it was a federal enclave rather than a state operation, it was integrated.
Okay.
And so all of the different races, backgrounds, cultures mixed totally.
Okay,
It was
good.
a fascinating experience to grow up in.
So you were born in the volunteer state, but you graduated from the Hoosier state. You went to Indiana University.
Went to Indiana University for my undergraduate work, and actually I went in there first as a music major because
Really?
I was a drummer. I
Okay.
played with a lot of rock and roll, jazz bands, and
Okay.
was interested in becoming a musician. But after a few months as a music major, I realized there were a lot of people who were better than me at that. So I shifted over to academics.
Who was your influence, musical influence growing up?
Oh man, I listened all the time to McCoy Tyner. You name it.
Right.
All the jazz greats of the 50s and 60s.
Wow, that's awesome. And after you went straight into law school. No, you did a master's in history at Harvard.
Yes, right. After I graduated, I went to Harvard on
Right into Harvard after you graduated from IU.
Yes, on a Woodrow Wilson Fellowship. I was a history major and did my master's there. My thesis was on U.S. policy in Laos during the 1960s, which
Okay.
was right before the Vietnam War. And but after I finished, got my master's degree, I decided I don't think I want to stay in academia at this point.
Okay.
I was interested in trying something new, and that's what first brought me to St. Croix.
Okay. So the first time you came to the Virgin Islands was in the late 60s or early 70s?
Late 60s, in 1968, I joined the Peace Corps, and the Peace Corps had its training camp for the Africa program, which is what I was in, at Beck's Grove here on St. Croix,
Okay.
Felix Peterson's property.
Yeah.
And so I was 2 months on St. Croix doing the training for the
Okay.
Peace Corps, and then 2 months in Ethiopia.
Okay. And then in the early 70s, you went back to law school, went out to Palo Alto.
All right, went out to California. I worked there after I got back from Africa. I worked in Palo Alto.
Well, let's talk a little bit about Africa. Where in Africa?
Sure. I was in Ethiopia.
Ethiopia?
I was 1 year up in the highlands of Ethiopia in Dessie, which is about 300 kilometers north of Addis Ababa.
Is Addis Ababa as beautiful as people
Fascinating place.
say it is?
Like every big, it's in the mountains. It's up high. It's in the highlands. It's a spectacular place. And
Wow.
back in the this was in 1968 and 69 that I was working in that area.
Wow.
Dessie, which is the town I was in for the first year I was there, is a smaller town. It's a provincial capital of Wello province, which is north of Addis Ababa. Fascinating place. And the second year I was there, I was out in the Ogaden Desert near the Somali border.
Okay.
Working with groups out there. So
Wow. And this is all part of the Peace Corps mission.
all part of the Peace Corps mission. And I also had a chance during the summer of '69 to, I think I had about 6 weeks off, and so I hitchhiked and traveled all around Tanzania, Kenya, and
So you saw Kilimanjaro?
I saw Kilimanjaro.
Is that a real look up? You're looking straight up because is that high?
I recommend it. It's beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful.
That's awesome.
Ended up down at Dar es Salaam and then back up to Mogadishu and then back into Ethiopia. So,
Wow.
And in those days, those countries had just gotten their independence recently.
Yeah.
And
They had been colonized by England,
Right.
Belgium,
Germany,
France,
etc.
Germany. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And in those days, being a poor Peace Corps volunteer, I hitchhiked around. I'd end up in villages at night, and people would offer to put me up in their places.
Any
feed me.
life threatening situations?
Never in that. The
Wow.
only life-threatening situation I had was when I was traveling to near the Somali border, and an American who had been fighting in some of in the Congo. He was a pretty crazy guy. Threatened to kill me and murder me when he learned I was a Peace Corps volunteer.
For real?
For real. And
Wow.
he pulled out his gun, stuck it to my head, and I was getting ready basically to dive out the train, which was roaring down the track. And an Ethiopian who'd been sitting across from me, whom I'd been talking with in Amharic, the native language, saved my life. Basically, ran back, got a guard who came and captured the guy.
Wow.
But that was the only threat I had, and it wasn't from an African. It was from an American who happened to be an African.
Really?
Right.
And he was anti-Peace Corps?
Anti-Peace Corps, right? He was armed, and he'd been involved in as a mercenary.
No. Okay. Well,
Yeah.
Okay. No. That crystallizes a lot of things.
That was back in 1968, 69. So
Okay. So since you're talking this time, this is Che Guevara. When he had decided he wanted to leave Cuba, and he told Fidel, I got brothers and sisters who are being oppressed in Africa, in the Congo. I think it was the Congo.
Yes.
So this is the same, or a little bit later. This is like 4 or 5 years after thereabouts, right? 60s,
yeah.
late 60s,
This is late 60s.
Yeah.
Obviously, Castro came to power there in the early 60s.
early
so-
60s, yeah.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, okay, good. So I just wanted to, from a time frame standpoint. You know.
Right. We were late 60s. I, by the way, met Haile Selassie twice.
Oh, yeah?
He was still Emperor of Ethiopia. He came by to view some of our projects. And I had the chance to see him and actually exchange a few words in Amharic with him. So
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. So, at what point did you say, time for me to go to law school?
Well, after I got back from Ethiopia, I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. I worked a bit as a carpenter, and then I was very involved in the anti-war movement at the time.
Okay.
And I decided to go to law school, and Stanford accepted me. And
And that whole Berkeley area, Cal, Palo Alto, major protests enclave in America.
absolutely, and it was a fascinating place to be. I was there from 71 to 74. San Francisco Bay Area, it was the height, one of the centers, not only of the anti-war movement, but also of the civil rights movement.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, I mentioned that my only really brush on the bad side of the law was during a anti-war, pro-civil rights demonstration that we had in Palo Alto when I was arrested along with about 300 other students for willfully and maliciously blocking a public thoroughfare during a peaceful demonstration. And I was we spent the night in jail in San Jose, and the next morning the judge called us all in and spoke to me directly and said, did you do this? And I said, yes, I was there. I was there on purpose. It was a matter of conscience, and I believe in what I stood for. And he said, case dismissed.
That's what I'm talking about. So you're talking 74.
74. Well,
Right.
that event was probably in 72. It was
Yeah.
while I was in law school.
No, I'm talking about you graduating in
Yes.
74, right?
Yes, sir.
So you're about 28, 29 at this point,
Right.
right?
Right. Early 20s. Mid 20s. You're right.
Yeah, right. UCLA was dominating college basketball at the time, right?
Yes.
And the reason why I bring this up, I've been a UCLA fan all my life, but Bill Walton, right, the big redhead, right?
Oh, yes.
He was of the same mindset like yourself, anti-war, right? He was big with that, right?
He was.
And that was the state of California for the most part, right? Led the charge, and then of course we had the situation in Kent State
Right.
and all that stuff, right?
Precisely.
So this was a very turbulent time for the country as a whole.
It was both anti-war and also the civil rights movements were really reaching their zenith during this whole time frame.
Yeah, I like that term, zenith. We have a table talk on Mondays with Rocky Liebert and Dux Cole. So when we hear certain words, we always lock them in. So I'm gonna use zenith on Monday when the boys come back in.
I might mention when I was in law school, I had to work to pay for the thing, but one summer I got a job back in St. Croix because I remembered how much I loved it down here when I was with the Peace Corps.
This is 71, 72, or 73 summer.
Summer of 73, the Fountain Valley trial summer.
Okay, yeah.
And I worked for that summer with the Isherwood Coleoni law firm on St. Croix and got to know.
Because that incident happened in September of 72.
Yes.
Yeah.
And the trial was in 73. I was able to attend some of the trial, but also got to know pretty much everybody in the Virgin Islands bar, at least on St. Croix at that point, and made lasting friends that have lasted to this day.
Judge Young was the judge then, right?
That's right. Judge Young was the judge, and of course the stars of the bar were people like
Almer Christian and
Almer Christian, and of course we had Winston Hodge, Albert Sheen,
Edgar Ross.
Of course, Edgar Ross was that whole set.
Vern Hodge.
Vern Hodge was big. Yes, we could go on forever, right?
But these are stalwarts, though. You know what I'm
Yes.
saying? That's what we're talking about, right? Like yourself, right? So,
I wasn't in that category at that point.
well, you were still wet behind the ears, right?
No question.
Still learning, right? Now, I see you've been barred in California, Washington, D.C., the Virgin Islands. Those are the only three jurisdictions you've been barred in?
Yeah, those are the three that I'm members of the bar. Yes.
Okay, good.
Oh,
and then you actually, at one point, you went before the Supreme Court?
Yeah, I've been before the Supreme Court, and I've been a member of the Supreme Court bar as well.
What makes that unique compared to the other bars?
Well, I mean, it's the highest court in the land.
Yeah.
All right. And again, whenever you.
But that's an appellate. That's an appellate.
That's on the appellate side. Yes.
Appellate side, yeah.
Right.
Okay, good. So, your claim to fame in the Virgin Islands is civil litigation, right? On behalf of the Virgin Islands, right?
That's one of the claims.
Well, that's what that's why I try to focus on. You know what I'm saying? So,
Gotcha.
And you have worked in the Virgin Islands as a lawyer for over 40 years.
Yes, sir.
I just mentioned what I look at, as a claim to fame. What's your highlight to this point? I mean, being the AG is a very prestigious position and all that stuff. But along the way,
it's hard to say. I came down here working full time. I had been a federal prosecutor in Washington, D.C. for about 6 years. I had been an assistant U.S. attorney up there. I'd worked with a big Senate investigating committee with Senator Frank Church in Mondale investigating CIA, FBI abuses. And I came down in '81 as a special assistant U.S. attorney. It was a federal prosecutor here.
I was going to ask that time. So that's Reagan, early Reagan.
Yes.
81.
Right, and I had to come down because it's an interesting story. I was in D.C. When Reagan was elected. I was a federal prosecutor, and I was the executive assistant U.S. attorney, which is sort of second or third in charge of that massive U.S. attorney's office in Washington.
Okay.
And when Reagan came in, he, of course, appointed new U.S. attorneys, as a new president always does. A gentleman that he appointed, Joe DeGeneva, had been my Republican counterpart.
Oh, yeah?
In Senator Church's committee.
Oh, yeah, Joe DeGeneva?
Joe DeGeneva, right.
Wow.
Back with the Church committee, whenever the senators couldn't agree on what are, the language of a report, they'd have me and Joe DeGeneva go into the back room and come up with a compromise, which we always did.
Okay.
And so we knew each other, even though politically we were at opposite poles.
Where was Scalia at this point?
Scalia.
Because we were dealing in that window you're talking about. We were dealing with our Judge Gash had ruled in our favor for the excise taxes in '78, right? And the appeal, the case turned out to be Blumenthal versus the VI, right? And that ruling didn't come down until '81. And this is around the same window. And Scalia at the time was a big lawyer for the Reagan administration,
right?
At that time,
never met him. I really don't recall much about him from that time frame.
Yeah. But Vern Hodge had won the case. They had won the case on our behalf before, but in between, by the time they had appealed it, he had already transitioned to being the chief judge at our territorial court. That's what it was at the time. You know what I'm saying?
Right. I remember Vern.
Yeah. So a lot of things were going on at that time you know,
It was
and
a-
it's very fluid.
Very fluid, very
Yeah.
crazy time. And so when Joe DeGeneva was appointed as the new U.S. attorney by Reagan, he called me in and said, Gordon, you got to step down because I want my own people to be running this office. I said, great. And he said, what would you like to do? And I said, well, there's an opening down in the Virgin Islands. They need a special
Oh, yeah?
assistant U.S. attorney. I've
Wow.
been down there before. I know a lot of people there.
So you're a Democrat. You're on the Democratic. You're on the blue side.
Yes.
And he's on the red side.
Right.
But he respected you so much that he had to let you know, look, I
Right.
got to do what I got to do, but
I'll send you down. And
Yeah.
I'll tell you the funny part. He sent me down. I was a special assistant down here in the islands. And every few months, Joe DeGeneva and his wife, Vicki Tension,
it came down.
would come down and stay with me for a day or
Yeah,
two.
man.
So back then, there was, even though you were on opposite political sides and had a lot of differences, you could still be friends.
Let me ask this question. Upon coming to the Virgin Islands, did you see the American paradise that it was labeled at?
Yes.
Upon first impression?
Yeah, my first impressions of the islands back in 1968, the refinery had just opened.
Yes. 2 years.
Right.
Yeah.
It was a very fluid place. In many ways, it had a lot of feel of Down Island because a lot of the older culture was still in place.
So we're talking about. We're talking with
yeah.
the one and only Gordon Ray, currently the Attorney General for the United States Virgin Islands. Take a break. Be back right after this, and we're also going to be joined at some point by the Commissioner of the IPD.
Yes, he's flying down. I think he'll be here in the next few minutes.
Okay, good. So we'll be back right after this. So we're back here to analyze this. We got Mr. Gordon Ray, even though it's spelled Rhea. It is pronounced Ray, right? Now in the Virgin Islands, this is your last name is a name that we use for a lot of ladies. We say Rhea, you know what I'm saying?
It's that way pretty much across the country.
Yeah,
And
okay.
I can tell you whenever it's a last name, it's pronounced
Ray,
Ray.
yeah.
But when it's a woman's first
Just
name,
it's
it's Ray.
Rhea. Oh, Rhea. Okay, so we're good with that. You comfortable with the conversation, where we're going, all that stuff? Because the audience, typically they like to get a feel, right?
Sure.
So the journey to get you to the couch is actually as important as what you're saying while you're on the couch with my audience. So I hope you're comfortable with that.
I appreciate that. Yes, very comfortable. And by the way, I just wanted to mention to you, I learned something this past Monday, March 10th, and that is that that's your birthday.
Yeah, man. I got up there.
It's my birthday as well.
What?
Yeah. I was born on March
Man,
10th.
Let me shake your hand, man. Let me shake your hand. You're a good man in more ways than one. You know what I'm saying? So happy birthday.
Thank you. Now,
Yeah, man.
I may have a few years on you.
A little bit. But yo, this is awesome, man. I liking this. So
But you were asking about the highlight
Yeah,
of your,
yeah.
again, being a federal prosecutor here for about 2 years was very important to me. I tried a lot of big cases.
but explain that whole process, because you said DeGeneva came to you and said, and that's the protocol, right?
Yes.
You got change in administration. You want people around you who you're comfortable with.
Exactly.
Right. So he recognizes your skill, and he's, you let him know, look, I used to live in the VI. I'd like to see if I could, if you can get me back down there.
Yes.
It works. So you were, what was your actual title when you came here per the Geneva appointment?
Okay. Per that appointment, I was a special assistant U.S. attorney.
Special assistant U.S.
is what they
attorney.
call me. And I was just like any of the other line assistants.
Did we have a U.S. attorney for the Virgin Islands at that particular point?
Yes, there was one. Ishmael Myers.
Okay.
Right. Ishmael Myers was U.S. attorney.
He turned out to be a judge, right? In the end, right?
He did.
Yeah, Judge
Exactly.
Myers out of St. Thomas, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
He was U.S. attorney. I was stationed in the St. Croix office, although I tried cases on both islands. I tried the big Top Hat case on St. Croix at the time, the big
Okay.
burglary of the
Yeah,
Top Hat restaurant, and several murders. Because back then,
Judge Marsh was still here at the time?
Marsh was not here.
He had already gone back to the
Right,
States.
Right.
Yeah.
It was David O'Brien
Judge O'Brien, yeah.
and Elmira Christian.
Okay.
Were the two federal court judges. And believe it or not, back in those days, all of the local felonies were tried in federal court.
Yeah.
So we were doing the murders, rapes, robberies,
And that was our appellate court as well.
and we went up to the Ninth Circuit, right?
Yeah, yeah.
I'm sorry, the Third
The
Circuit.
Third Circuit. But because we didn't have a Supreme Court, right? The district court also served as an appellate level, right?
Yes.
At that particular point. I just want to make sure my history is correct
Right.
with
The
that.
district court was at the appellate level for cases that were tried in the territorial court.
Correct.
And those were predominantly misdemeanors, that sort of thing.
Correct. Now, there's a distinction with the tribunals, a certain type, a title, something 3 or a title 4 or whatever it is. Can you explain that to the public so that, yeah, you can rest that down. Explain, the distinction between our courts at the Supreme Court level and a Supreme Court level in the state. There's a distinction. Explain that.
Well, I mean, our system has changed. Back then, in the early 80s, when I came here, there was a territorial court, which was sort of the equivalent of a state court, but a lot of what would have been tried in a state court in the U.S. was tried in our federal courts here. And appeals from our territorial court would go into the federal court, and appeals from our federal court would go up into the Third Circuit Court of Appeals, which was in Philadelphia.
Philadelphia.
Exactly.
Right.
And from there, it could go into the U.S. Supreme Court.
Okay.
That changed, obviously, in more recent days, and so we now have a Superior Court, which handles all of our local offenses. Basically, the Superior Court is the equivalent of a state court in the U.S. And we have a Federal Court, which is pretty much the equivalent of a federal court in the U.S. because it handles federal cases. And we now have our own Supreme Court, which is taking the appeals out of our Superior Court, and appeals, obviously, out of the federal district courts on St. Croix and St. Thomas go into the Third Circuit Court of Appeals, and then up to the U.S. Supreme Court if necessary.
There we go. So the public has a structural understanding of
Okay,
how
yeah.
we go about dealing with that. Now, you went back into the private sector at some point?
I did. A good friend of mine was Thomas Alcon. Tom Alcon, I'd met him back in 1973 because he was with Isherwood and Coliani then, and he was becoming sort of the preeminent plaintiff's lawyer on St. Croix. And I joined him, and we set up Alcon and Ray, a law firm. I believe we started that in 1983.
You on Company Street or King Street?
We were on King Street for several years in the old Pentheny building, and then we moved up around to some other spots and ended up on actually up above Company Street.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
We did pretty much all plaintiffs' cases, and at that time, the bulk of the cases were injured workers from the refinery, from the oil refinery and from the bauxite refineries. And then we got
Hess and Harvey.
Right, Hess and Harvey.
Yeah.
And then it obviously changed Alcoa and then Martin Marietta, whatever. But also we did a lot of the big product liability cases and got into doing environmental litigation. But most of it was for injured people. We did no real civil defense work. Because of my background as a prosecutor, I also ended up doing a fair amount of criminal defense work. So that's when I got some real experience in doing that side of practicing law. But
Okay, so
and Tom Alcon and I had that firm going for about 15 years, I'd say. It was throughout the 80s.
so that took you into the 90s.
Into the 90s,
Yeah.
exactly. And we were, I think of ourselves at that time as being sort of the preeminent plaintiff's civil attorney firm.
Okay, good. So then you head back to the States?
Back and forth, right. Our first son was born right before Hurricane Hugo. We were living here, of course, in our...
You were here in '89 when we were slammed?
Well, sure. Yeah, slammed. I'd been living for, since the early 80s. Little Princess Hill, and our house was just destroyed with me in it, my wife, and our 4-month-old son.
Wow.
It was a scary time.
Yeah, man.
I know you remember those times.
Yeah, man. Yeah. But we were fortunate. We had a concrete roof.
Oh.
So we didn't experience the trauma that a lot of people devastated. But you were in Little Princess Hill, so you were exposed.
We were exposed right there, just above Wapa, and we actually survived the storm largely by putting mattresses on top of us and that sort of thing. It was unbelievable.
Wow.
Yeah,
How long it took you to recover? Physically?
Well, physically, I stayed
I know
there.
mentally, you probably, a certain type of howling wind to get you to remember, that particular night, that particular experience.
It comes right back.
Yeah.
Yep, there's a certain level of PTSD, I think, associated with that.
Yeah.
But we didn't have electricity for many, many months. It feels like it was 6 to 8 months. We couldn't live in that house anymore. My wife was ultimately able to get off island with our infant son. Because, as you know, the airports were closed. I mean, nothing. You couldn't move, and we finally were able to put it back together. But we started living part time in the islands, and then part time in the States.
Okay.
And
When did you get into writing books?
I got into writing books because I had been into history for both my undergraduate and graduate work. I always loved writing, and I began writing books actually in the 1980s. My first book was published in 1994, and since then I've written 8 books.
Wow, congratulations.
I do a lot of historical work. Generally, I work with university presses.
Okay.
And the bulk of the books that I've done, actually all the books I've done, deal with the U.S. Civil War and Reconstruction periods.
So that is 1860 to
Up 78,
thereabouts?
thereabouts.
Now, but in reality, the Reconstruction actually lasted long beyond 1878. That window is the defined window.
Yes.
But I try to tell people this: Reconstruction was not just an 18-year or 20-year window.
As a matter of fact, it's still going on.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. So because I have Malik Siku, he joins me on a regular basis, and we share, historical perspectives, what have you. As a matter of fact, we actually have a Fulbright scholar that's going to be coming on Friday. He's from South Africa, and he's lecturing at Lincoln University. So he's going to talk about life in South Africa post 1990, when apartheid was eradicated. I guess whatever word you want to use. De Klerk at the time was the prime minister. So we're going to break that down for our on Friday. Now let's get to the gig that you're dealing with now, because I'm sure the public wants to know, right? How does the Attorney General adjudicate or process all that stuff associated with crimes that come before the people of the Virgin Islands?
Well, that's a big question.
Yeah, well, you got a big gig.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's true. The Justice Department obviously is covering the whole territory. It's one department, and there are about 160 employees.
Territory-wide?
Territory-wide.
Okay.
We have basically 13 main divisions. People are familiar with the criminal division, obviously, which handles criminal offenses on both islands. On all 3 islands, basically, or even more, on the whole works.
Yeah.
We have a center in St. Croix, and obviously one on St. Thomas that's covering St. John and Water Island as well. In any event, we have this criminal division. We then have a civil division, which represents the government both in its suits that it brings or in suits that it defends against. We have a Solicitor General's division, which handles all the appeals, either criminal or civil, for the government. And then
Mac Davis used to be the Solicitor General at one point, right?
Right, Pam Tepper is
right now?
Is right now and has been for a while. They also handle advice to all the different departments, and they review contracts done by all the different departments. It's massive. Then we have a lot of other divisions that people I'm sure have never even heard of. We have one called Mafuku that looks at issues involving Medicare.
Okay.
SORNA, which handles the sexual offender registry and related issues. We have the paternity child support division, which does the kind of work you would expect it to be doing. The list goes on. I could spend quite a bit of time.
This is
talking
vast.
about this. It's vast. We have the medical examiners unit. I mean, it just keeps going on and on.
Who's responsible for the coroner?
For the coroner?
Yeah. Structurally.
Right. Okay. Structurally, and it's very strange. In most places, it's usually the Department of Health. Here, it's the Justice Department.
That's why I asked that question.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so we are in charge with overseeing the morgues, the medical examiners, and obviously we do that in conjunction with the Department of Health and with the police.
Okay, good.
But
no. Upon arriving into, have you worked in the Attorney General's office in the Virgin Islands before at any point?
I never had worked here before, but my 6 years as a federal prosecutor in Washington gave me a good background in that, and during
on a much larger scale, of
much
course.
larger scale, and also during the last 2 years I was in that office, I was, as I mentioned, the executive assistant U.S. attorney, which is basically running the office. So I'd had some experience with that, and my style of management is to listen to people. To invite people to tell me what's going right, what's going wrong, and do you have any ideas about how we can make it better? Upon
arriving, you started April, May?
I started in May. I think May 20th was my start date of 2024.
And upon arrival, what jumped out at you as an area of priority that you wanted to address and get it back to flowing?
One of the big things I saw right away was that the Justice Department, the Police Department, the U.S. Attorney's Office, federal law enforcement, everybody was operating independently, and there was very little cooperation between the departments.
So camaraderie was
critical. I said, this is important. We've got to reach out to our companion law enforcement agencies because we're all in the same business, in the same place, working to solve the same kind of crimes. Let's talk. Let's work together. Also, I wanted to reach out to the public defender and to the defense bar because even though we're on opposite sides, we need to move cases. We need to reach results that are going to be fair because the Justice Department is not just there to put people in jail. It's there to do that when you need to, but it's also there to try to help people. And so I wanted to put that kind of a system together. And so that's been sort of a priority of mine for some time.
What other areas, from a personnel standpoint, did you think you needed to be beefed up?
Well, we needed to also beef up our number of people that we had in several of our different divisions. There's a lot of personnel shortages. I know the Justice Department is not the only department that has shortages, but
we actually had a doctor in here last week who spoke about the need for more specialty doctors in specialty areas. So we're deficient.
Right.
I'm just being candid, and I don't, and I'm not knocking because we're not different from other jurisdictions who have shortages as well. But that's the issue that we're dealing with.
And we had some big shortages, let's say in our criminal division. We need more prosecutors. The ideal situation would be 2 prosecutors per courtroom. That's pretty much the national standard. We aren't anywhere near that.
Wow.
Our Solicitor General's division.
Are we actively recruiting?
Yes, very actively recruiting. And again, it's funding issues that get in the way. But we are actively recruiting. Another goal of mine in the recruiting area is to try to bring in more local lawyers, people with local experience, familiarity with the local culture,
and the terrain.
Yeah,
man.
Well, who know people here, who know what's going on, who can talk to juries, who can handle all of that. And I just want to say that there are several good applicants who've come in. And
what's your relationship with the current U.S. Attorney?
Very good. Right, Delia Smith and I talk all the time, and I also have a very good relationship with her criminal chief, Mike Connolly. And I've cultivated that because, as I viewed it, the U.S. Attorney's Office and AG's office, or DOJ, are really on similar paths. We should be working together. And there's a lot of cases that have both local interest and federal interests. Another big thing is that the federal government has the ability to get a lot of the forensic work done. The DNA testing, I could go down the list, but there's a lot of that sort of thing.
No, I'm glad you went there because 10 years ago, Senator Francis and myself, when I was a senator, I'm now washed up, right? Right? We passed legislation to construct and create a forensic lab in the Virgin Islands.
Yes.
Now, that's a big undertaking, right? Because it requires a lot of security protocol, because the biggest thing is protecting evidence, right, and not wanting evidence to be contaminated and all that stuff.
Right.
Would that be beneficial to the Attorney General's office?
I think that would be great if we had that. We don't. Right now, we're in a situation where a lot of that kind of evidence has to be sent off island. It can be almost forever before it comes back.
And adversely impacted.
Yes, and adversely impacted. You have chain of custody issues, as we say in the law, all sorts of things like that. By working in conjunction with the U.S. Attorney's Office, they can get a lot of that done for us through ATF, FBI, various testing agencies. And so I've tried to cultivate that relationship. Also, I've spent some time cultivating a relationship with the police department. And I know we have the police commissioner, Mario Brooks, I think, who...
No, he's going to be joining. As a matter of fact, looks like you've been hosting radio shows before, because we're actually going to segue to him. He's going to be joining us in the next segment. Talk about the relationship between your agency, the Department of Justice, and the Virgin Islands Police Department, which is critical, right?
Yes, very critical. And I asked him if he could just join us for a few minutes today, and he was very interested in doing that so that we could show you that Justice and VIPD are working together to help.
We got that. We'll take a break and be joined by Commissioner Brooks right after this.
Thank you.
And we're back here, analyze this, having a great discussion with Gordon Ray. We did the history thing. Now we're talking about his administrative responsibilities with the Virgin Islands Department of Justice. We got the commissioner on the line. He's not on the line yet, so we're waiting for him to call in. By the way, one thing about my audience, right, which is the strength of the show, they like to correct information. Apparently, Judge Myers is from St. John, not St. Thomas.
Okay.
Ishmael Myers, right? They say East St. John, and they believe John's Valley out in that area out there. So Judge Myers is St. Jonian.
I think that, yes, I think that is correct.
Yeah.
I knew him well. He was based in the office on St. Thomas.
Yeah, well, that's where it was. Yeah.
Right. Every time I visited with him, worked with him, and
no, that was me. I was the one who said St. Thomas, not you. So they were correcting me to let me know. Even though he was working in St. Thomas, he's of St. John.
Right.
Okay, good. We're now we got the Commissioner Mario Brooks joining us on the line. Good morning, Commissioner Brooks. Welcome to Analyze This.
Hey, good morning, Mr. James. How are you doing? Good morning, Attorney Ray. Listening public, Virgin Islands, good morning to you.
Glad to have you on. So, Mr. AG, talk about why it's critically important for Department of Justice and the Virgin Islands Police Department as executive branch entities to be working for the most part in lockstep.
Right. Well, first, it is absolutely critical. One thing that surprised me when I first came onto this job back in May of last year was that there was very little communication going on between the prosecutors and the police. But yet the police are the people who are out there investigating, who make the cases, and who bring them in. When I worked in Washington, D.C. as a federal prosecutor, the style there was as soon as the case was brought, the police and the prosecutor would get together, they'd go out, visit the crime scene so the prosecutor could learn what this was all about, where did this happen, understand all of that. It was a working relationship. I didn't see that here, and that really surprised me. They were like independent agencies, but yet we were doing the same, solving the same crimes. And so I reached out, and when Mario Brooks became commissioner, he has been extraordinarily helpful because he has the same vision, and that is we need to work together. And so what we've been doing, we talk frequently, and we've put together a system where our prosecutors and the police actually sit down at the same table and talk with each other and start talking about here's what's working, here's what's not working, here's how we can fix it. And we're looking at streamlining a lot of our systems, our case intake system. I'm also very interested in having prosecutors, when there's a major arrest taking place or a major event taking place, to go out there. And I'm setting up a system for doing that so that there can be a prosecutor on the scene. Again, that was the kind of system I was used to in Washington, and it worked so well. I'd love to see it in place here. And I think that's one of the things that Commissioner Brooks can explain. But the bottom line between our relationship is we're working together. And we believe that that's the way that we can both be most effective. And we invite the community's input. Because, again, the police can't function, we can't function, unless the community also works with us, talks with us, reports things to us, and understands that we're all on the same page.
Commissioner, what's your take on what the Attorney General just articulated?
Oh, he's 100% correct. It's so important that both agencies work together because, again, while we're not police department personnel, the police department, we really enforce the law when there are arrests made and so forth. There must be discussion, there must be collaboration so that when these cases go before, whether it's a judge or a jury, they're complete. They're being reviewed appropriately, and they meet the standard that is needed in order for the case to be adjudicated correctly. So that was one of the issues that we had identified, and Gordon and I sat and we said, hey, listen, we have to make sure that this occurs and it occurs as frequently as possible. So we have, him and I could discuss on a regular basis, but our teams, they meet on a monthly basis. Sometimes as soon as a case comes up to go before the courts, they have a review, they do their discussions, they ensure that they're prepared appropriately. And that's the way the partnership is supposed to work. So I'm very happy that we had an opportunity to meet, and we both have the same vision and goals for our department. And a good testament as to what exactly can occur when we work together is what occurred yesterday. And we made those substantial arrests there in St. Croix. So I'm really excited for the partnership, and I expect that it will continue to reach higher heights.
Now, yesterday, talk a little bit about Attorney General, what transpired on St. Croix that the Commissioner just referenced.
Well, we made some arrests, and this really harkens back to what happened actually this past Sunday there at the fish market in Frederickstead.
Okay.
You're aware of the shootings that were there, I'm sure.
Yeah. That was this Sunday or the Sunday before?
It feels like it was just this last Sunday.
Yeah. No. It was the Sunday before because Dr. Hendricks was on last Wednesday or Tuesday, and he actually was in Frederickstead, so it was the Sunday before an incident happened in Frederickstead, right?
The days run together in my mind.
Yeah, the time flies fast. Time flies fast, yeah.
Whichever. As soon as that all happened, Mario Brooks reached out to me and also to my special assistant, Ricky Messer. We reached back to our office, and what happened right away was the police were there on the scene, doing exactly what they do best. And one of our prosecutors, the head of our criminal division, came over to Frederickstead and was there as well, so that we had both the AG's office and
the
police
VIPD
all together and cooperating and working together, and it was fantastic. Some warrants were also needed for these people, and those were issued, and the arrests were made.
No, without giving away specifics, because we're dealing with a live case.
Exactly.
Right? The evidence gathering part was smooth, in your opinion, or sufficient enough to allow for you to be confident to go before the judge to get the warrants?
Oh, yes. And the warrants actually related to some earlier crimes committed by those same people.
No.
Right.
So these are habitual offenders based on how you're seeing it right now?
Yes.
Okay.
And it's an ongoing process.
Yeah, so we can't get into details. I don't want to underline or marginalize the case. You know what I'm saying?
I got you. And I can't really talk about the details for those reasons.
Yeah.
But the big point is that police and us were working as a team, and this is what we can do, and we do that, and both myself and Commissioner Brooks are committed to this working relationship.
Commissioner, based on what you're seeing now, generically speaking, you're confident that once this moves to the judicial branch, that the arguments on behalf of the government, based on what you have, substantiate what you did yesterday?
Yes, definitely. And again, that's the beauty of working together. We were able to conduct a review to ensure that we had the necessary amount of information and it was credible enough to warrant getting those warrants. And once we received those, then the next thing was just to execute, which we did. And very proud of the way the team operated. They executed expeditiously, safely. We were able to make those arrests. Those individuals are currently incarcerated. So, but this goes a perfect example of what we can do to Gordon's point when we work together. And we have to ensure that our community remains safe. And the only way we can do that is to work together in an expeditious manner. I'm a firm believer in moving with a sense of purpose. And I know after that situation occurred, there was a cry in the community. There was nothing being done. But believe you me, the wheels had already started to turn on our end. We had already spoke, like Gordon mentioned. I gave them a call and said, hey, we got to work on this. This has to be addressed immediately. And this is a perfect example of what we need to do so we can get it done and we can show the community that working together is investment, the best interest of everyone in general. And that's what we did. Our teams got together. They reviewed all the evidence that they had collected. And by all means, that was pushed forward. We got the warrants approved, and then it was just to execute. Within a short period of time, within 72 hours of getting those warrants approved, we executed. We executed expeditiously. I'm very proud of the IPD. I'm very proud of these officers, the way we move together, and this is an example of what we'll be doing going forward. So my message to the criminal element is this is what will be happening to you. You have wanton disregard for public safety. You put the community lives in danger. VIP and DOJ will do our part to ensure that we get you off these streets.
Now, let me ask this question. The underlying issue in the Virgin Islands, Mr. Attorney General, Mr. AG,
Yes.
Gordon Ray, is guns in the territory. Way too many guns for a small community like ours. I think we had a successful, buyback or whatever it was with Senator Johnson and Senator DeGraff, both former police officers, now senators. What can we do, Mr. AG, and then Commissioner Brooks, to address how guns get into the territory? The criminal element now, and they're actually in the assembly business. They're so smart now. The guns ain't coming in whole. They're coming in parts, and they're doing what they got to do.
Well, there's several different levels that it can get dealt with. One level is obviously the legislative level, and we've been strong supporters of some legislation that has been being passed. There's some more that's coming up to cover a lot of these problems. For instance, there's the issue of ghost guns. I don't know if you're familiar with that term, but these
articulate for the audience.
Right. Ghost guns are guns that are assembled from parts and don't have serial numbers or anything like that on them.
Mm-hmm.
We have a statute that says that you can't basically deface or get rid of a serial number on a gun. But these never had them in the first place, and so that charge could not be brought. So we cooperated in getting that statute amended
so there was some legislative
fix that says basically if you have a gun, it has to have a serial number.
Yes,
It's illegal if it doesn't. So that covers ghost guns and everything else. So we've been able to expand in a lot of those areas. Obviously, the big question is how do we stop them from coming into the territory? And I think that's going to take some cooperation with some of our sister islands, including the BVIs, the Commissioner Brooks and myself, and the U.S. Attorney and others have been starting to put together a system so that we can talk with our counterparts in the British Virgin Islands to come up with ways to stop or slow down or impact the trade in the inter-island trade in weapons, in drugs, and of course in human trafficking. So there's several different levels where that can happen. The bottom line, though, for any of this is we also have to rely on the community.
Oh yeah,
we rely on the community to report to us.
So the cliche "it takes a village" is real. This is not just an adage or a cliche.
Exactly. The police need to have people come to them and tell them, here's where guns are, here's where violent things are taking place. Because no part of the system can work without the community. The community is the ultimate law enforcement agency that we have.
Yeah. Now, Commissioner Brooks, I want to ask you this question in a different vein. What about our ports? What can the police department, in working with the Port Authority and points of entry, to address this problem that we got, which has been like a 25-year problem now, with way too many guns coming into the Virgin Islands?
So that's a very good question. So we've already moved in the direction of progression working with the ports. So to the Attorney General's point, there was a law that was implemented. It's been on the books for quite a while relative to the importation of firearms and having to declare them upon arrival. As a result of that, a few years ago, we opened the kiosk, or the substations that you see at both Cyril King and Henry Rosen airports. And they're there for a reason, because the law specifically stated that, upon arrival with a firearm, you had a period of time to turn those firearms in. Individuals would leave the airport and go, and then if you pull them over, you stop them, you find a firearm, they'll say, well, I was going to the nearest police station. There was always a loophole. Now there's none. The law is clear. We have a substation at the airport. If you're coming in with a firearm, you're supposed to declare that firearm right at the airport. We have the mechanisms in place to take control of those firearms, and when you declare them, they're transported to a firearm division where they are processed. And if you're a licensed owner, then by all means, we go through the process, and then your weapon is released to you based on GI law. But if that's not the case, then we take the next steps. That is for the main ports of entry as it stands right now. Of course, we know there are individuals that do bring them in. I can attest that we've had several situations where individuals were brought in multiple firearms, and we've had to utilize the law and deal with those situations as they occur. What made the issue that Attorney raised about is when they're bringing imported illegally or they know how to smuggle in, and that's where we work along with our federal counterparts. We have several initiatives that we work along with the federal counterparts at the airports and at the seaports, and that they identify those firearms and we identify the individuals who are bringing them in, and we make the substantial arrests that are coming in. The issue also is, and he talked about the manufacturing of firearms. So that's where we work along again with the federal our federal counterparts, because what you mentioned is it's not only bringing those illegal parts in, it's actually mailing them, and they come in through the mail service. So we work along with the postmaster, and we identify those parts when they come in, and of course we confiscate them. It's an investigation. I won't go too in depth with it, but let's know that we've made arrests with individuals who have mailed or ordered parts, and those parts came in. And of course, through working along with the postmaster, we've been able to make arrests in those areas as well. But there's always that loophole. There's always that area that we may miss. And those are the areas where we ask the community, if you know something, you let us know, you give us a heads up. But, it's lessons learned. So if something gets by, we figure it out. If there's law that needs to be implemented, we take it to the Senate. We ask for implementation of these laws or addition to what we currently have. And then we once those have been passed, now we have that law to help us enforce and address those areas. But again, it all comes to working together, cohesion. And we can't do that without the conversations, without meetings. So, and that's where Gordon and I do our part.
Commissioner, I want to thank you for joining us this morning. Looking forward to getting you back in the studio at some point in the near future. Because the carnival coming up, right? So we set up something for April because we want a incident-free carnival for 2025.
Yeah, we're perfect for carnival. But let me throw this right in quick. Again, you mentioned the gun buyback. It was successful this very past Saturday at St. Croix. We did it. It was very, very successful. I'm very impressed and happy with the community in the St. Croix district.
Okay.
They came and they showed up, and we collected some substantial firearms.
Okay, we're going to a break. Hang on there, right? And then I'll excuse you when we come back right after the break.
Okay.
We're talking with Attorney General Gordon Ray and Virginia Police Department Commissioner Mario Brooks. Be back right after this. And we're back here to analyze this. We got the Virginia Police Department Commissioner Mario Brooks on the line, and we got Attorney General Gordon Ray here in the studio. Commish, good morning once again. You are wrapping up the information about the success with the gun buyback?
Yes. I was just telling you we had a successful showing on Saturday on St. Croix, very successful. Collected a substantial amount of firearms. I think we'll have the presser out again this sometime today to let the public know what we did. And then we're going to be doing St. Thomas, St. John this coming Saturday. So we're really looking forward to just bringing this program out to the public, giving them an opportunity. Those individuals who may have firearms that's sitting around in a house, whether it's a deceased family member that had that firearm or somebody gave it to them or it was found, whatever. No questions asked. We're not asking any questions. We don't need any IDs. You bring it in. We have it evaluated, appraised, and you walk away with cash. No questions asked. And all of this, of course, is in an effort to just get these firearms off the street. And while some may think that it's not people are not going to turn in firearms, again, Saturday proved that it's not true. We collected a substantial amount in the St. Croix district. So again, I want to thank the community for participating and coming out and just taking the lead and just assisting us in getting these firearms off the street. That just speaks a lot about where we are and what the community wants as far as safety is concerned. So thank you again. I thank you, Mr. James, for the opportunity to come on. I will take you to that. You will be seeing me soon. I'll have Glenn set it up, and I'll be visiting you soon. And Gordon, thank you again for your support, my brother. Look forward to doing some wonderful things with you in this community.
Thank you, Mario. We will keep working together. It's been a pleasure.
Definitely. Thank you. Have a good day, guys.
Thank you very much, Commissioner.
Okay, bye. Yeah.
Good. That's Commissioner Mario Brooks joining us for the last segment and wrapping up. Had a successful gun buyback. So we got to give Senators DeGraff and Johnson props, right? Because I think they were the ones who were working with the police department
yes,
to make this happen. So I don't want them to say that, it's just a police department thing. The Senate doesn't. So I heard the PSAs announcing it, so we made that happen. So some questions, right? First of all, is there high turnover, or was there high turnover in the DOJ, and what attributed to that? Based on what you've seen
Right.
over the last 10 months.
Right. Yeah,
Yeah.
I've been in here, close to 10 months in this job. The turnover, I wouldn't call it high, but there has been turnover, yes. And
But doesn't that come with the territory?
that comes with the territory. The hiring issues and the turnover issues are complex. I had 3 or 4 different attorneys leave. They were originally from the States, were down, and families wanted them back, that sort of thing. That hit us. We lost 3 big people that I particularly liked because of family issues.
In the litigator area?
Litigator
Yeah,
area,
yeah.
yes, and one of my deputies also
Okay.
had to go. Also, people, younger attorneys looking for better jobs, higher paying jobs. One big issue, as I see it, is this one, and it affects us on the hiring side. A lot of Virgin Islanders obviously end up in the States, finish college there, and
The
then
state?
go in the States, and then go to law school in the States, and then get a good job up there. So a lot of the cream of the crop, we can say, that would be great if we had them down here, aren't here anymore. And I really feel that. Fortunately, there are some who've returned, and I think what you're going to see over the next few months is we're able to start to bring more people on, is that we're going to increase the number of local Virgin Islanders
That's a
in our
good
department.
thing.
Yeah, I'm committed to that.
Okay. Second question. The legal realm, right, is about getting finality with cases, right? In some
Yes.
instances, plea deals are a part of the deal. How do you go about getting, based on your experience, the best plea deal where either side will come away from it still wanting more, which means that it was a successful plea deal, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. They say a deal is successful if neither side was fully satisfied.
Correct. So what are the parameters that you put in place for plea agreements?
Well, it varies again with each case. I'm having been a prosecutor for many years, as I mentioned, in Washington, and then again down here, and having worked the defense side as well for many years as a defense attorney. I understand that a big part of the Justice Department role is to help people, not just put people in jail, but help people. I'm very concerned, for instance, young folks who commit a crime, who are then looking at facing the rest of their life with a felony conviction, which is going to mean they may never be able to get a good job. I mean, it's going to impact their entire life. I'm interested in setting up and increasing the number of diversion programs so that you can use the criminal justice system. Someone's arrested, a young person, for an offense. If their case can be held in abeyance and terms set so that they have to either complete school or do job training or do drug treatment or do anger management counseling, whatever it might be to fit the case. If they do all of those things, then their case could be dismissed, or they could plead to a lesser offense. And that's a system that's used throughout the states, and I'd like to see it used more often here. I think it can play a big part in helping the entire community. That would be one type of plea deal that could be done. And we're doing some of that, but I'd like to see more. A big problem is there aren't a lot of good agencies set up that can help those people. In other words, if you're going to have anger management counseling, you need to be able to send them somewhere, and then that has to be financed. So it gets complex. But that's something, again, I'm interested in putting into place as much as we can. If you have, let's say, a murder case, and that's one that you'd obviously want to prosecute where jail time is likely. And I know, because that gets reported every time, is that we often have to dismiss those. The question is why? Why would a prosecuting agency do that? Well, it has to do with evidence. Our burden in a court is to prove guilt beyond a reasonable doubt.
Yeah.
Exactly. And if witnesses aren't there, if there's no good fingerprints, if all of the evidentiary bases that you need to prove a case aren't there, you really have no option.
So you're making an argument now for the need for sound infrastructure.
Absolutely. And for community involvement and help, because we've had many important cases, big cases that involve serious crimes that can't go forward because witnesses refuse to testify or come forward. They change their mind in their testimony, or the forensic analysis doesn't come through, and we can't prove the fingerprints or we can't prove the DNA evidence.
That's what I was talking about, sound infrastructure, because you got to protect
Exactly.
right that particular necessary evidence that you're using
Exactly.
to make a case on behalf of the people.
And if you don't have the evidence, you have no option to either dismiss it, or if you have evidence but it's nothing like you had hoped you were going to have, then the best route to go might well be to let the person plead out to something less than the full offense.
Because you don't have the evidence to go with the charge to
Exactly.
substantiate the charge as originally presented to the court.
Exactly. But you can get something, and
Yes.
something is better than nothing.
Without a doubt.
And I know there's always
Even though justice is what we want,
exactly
right?
But
there are instances where some type of penalty or compromise, right?
you got to
works
work.
out.
You got to work with what you got.
Okay,
Right.
good. Now, you're an author, so you know about the Constitution and all
Yes.
that stuff. So I want you to educate me more and the public who may not know, right? District courts are typically Article 3,
Yes.
right?
Those are the federal courts.
Those are federal courts. However, the Virgin Islands, our district court is Article 4. And that is because we're a territory.
Yes.
Break that down for the public in lay people language to the best of your ability so that they can understand that just because we have district courts, it don't mean that we are parallel to district courts on the mainland.
Right. Well, our federal district court is an Article 3 court, which is parallel with the federal courts on the mainland.
Yeah.
But our local court
Local court.
is not a federal court. It is in many ways somewhat parallel to state courts. But since we're a territory, there's also a federal presence, basically.
Now, I'm reading something here. It said the District Court of the Virgin Islands derives its jurisdiction from Article 4, Section 3 of the United States Constitution, which authorizes Congress to regulate the territories of the United States. This distinguishes it from federal courts whose jurisdiction is grounded in Article 3.
Right.
Can you break that down?
Okay. Well, again, our local courts,
Yeah.
right, are based on that Article 4 power
Yeah, yeah,
that you're talking about. They're
Yeah. Mandate.
mandate,
Yeah.
right, and that's how they're set up. Our federal courts are very much like the federal courts in the states, but slightly different. And we could do a whole article on that.
Yeah. So there is a
Get
distinction
complex.
because we're a territory,
Yes.
and Congress has control over territories,
Exactly.
unlike states who have their own constitution and part of the union.
Right, and there's that gets important in a lot of different legal areas. I don't want to get
Yeah,
too
yeah,
technical,
no,
but the fact that we are a federal territory and not an independent state raises a lot of issues with respect to, say, double jeopardy. We're not two separate sovereigns. The courts have said that we are really a single sovereign, which puts us in the same package as the federal government is for a lot of legal purposes.
There we go. Now, this is a question I was going to ask you, but one of my listeners asking a question along the same vein, right? At what point does Gordon Ray say it's over?
Oh, okay. I guess you mean at what point?
A full retirement.
Full retirement.
Yeah.
You know, I've been asked that by a lot of people. I know most people my age are playing golf or sitting around watching TV.
Yeah.
That's not me.
Okay.
I like to get out there and do things.
Yeah.
I like to help affect change. I view this work, this job, being Attorney General, as sort of a culmination of my legal career and of my work life.
This is crystallizing everything.
Yes.
To this point, in your opinion, you see it as a crystallization.
I do, and I see this as a big opportunity that I've been offered to give back, to help to do some positive things. And I think, as I've mentioned, I've always been sort of a do-gooder all my life. And this is a chance to really try to do just that. If I could help over the next almost 2 years until the end of the governor's term.
22 months to be exact.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. If I can help to make the Justice Department do the things that a Justice Department should really do, with cooperating with the sister departments, bringing in good personnel, a lot of other things I'm interested in seeing it happen, I would feel like that would be the culmination of a legal career, and I would be extremely happy.
Well, let me dovetail on that then.
Well,
have you identified the next Gordon Ray?
What I do after that?
No. Have you identified a successor, or those who have the capacity and the ability to be the next Attorney General?
I have not specifically identified someone, but I would be more than glad to help.
Do we have, in your opinion, do we have that potential here living in the Virgin Islands right now?
Yes, I know 3 or 4 people. I don't want to.
No. Don't count on them. I'm just saying that because I want to reaffirm to the public that, and this is something that I do on a regular basis, we have historically shown that we can hold our own with anybody. I mean, let's look at the history. Alexander Hamilton come all the way up. I mean, it speaks for itself. So you're confirming here today that we have it among us and within us. It's about us bringing it out.
Yes, I confirm that.
Okay, good.
No question about it.
Okay, good.
And I just wanted to mention one other thing on my own part, that I don't have any other political aspirations or anything like that. I'm not looking at being an Attorney General as a stepping stone to something else. I'm looking at this as sort of a culmination of my legal career in which I can help do some good and positive things. And if that all happens, then I will be extremely happy.
If you had a message for the young people now, what would you tell the young people of the Virgin Islands right now?
I would tell the young people of the Virgin Islands that this is a fantastic place. It's a place, though, that needs a lot of work, and we could spend some time talking about all of that. And obviously law enforcement and justice is one of the areas where it needs a lot of work. But my advice would be jump in, stay here, and do the work. And be ready that there's going to be setbacks, there's going to be criticisms, there will be all sorts of things. But don't stop. Push ahead.
You coming back so we could talk about you as an author?
I'd love to.
Now, the Stephen Swales thing, which is personal for you.
Yes.
And Wallace Williams sent me a photo, and he said, attorney, what's his name? Wilfredo
High-Hell, you mentioned.
High-Hell, yeah. He actually was presenting a workshop at the Florence Williams Library at one point. So he was talking about Stephen A. Swales, a black freedom fighter in the Civil War. And he said, is in tune with the fact that my great-grandfather, a slave, fought for the Union Army out of Kentucky, and he's buried in a special cemetery in Dayton, Ohio right now. So this is personal for my audience as well. Absolutely. You know what I'm saying? So we want to make sure that we get you back in here so we could talk about you, Gordon Ray, the author, and not our Department of Justice #1 man. It was nice to have you here today, man. Nice to see you, and looking forward to talking with you again sometime soon.
Thank you very much, and I give best wishes to yourself, to the listening audience, to everybody else out there. So thank you, sir.
And thank you, staff.
Oh, definitely. I have a fantastic staff.
Okay, good. We got it. That's Gordon Ray, and of course, Mario Brooks joined us as well. Great conversation today. Looking forward to talking with you tomorrow. The Casino Control Commission coming in, along with Amina Salim with the new dialysis center that's opening up here in Mid-Island. Talk to you then. Bye-bye.
The views and opinions expressed on Analyze This are entirely those of the on-air participants and do not reflect those of the station's board,